Today I'm partnering with Cashmerette to sew and share their Mercier jumpsuit pattern. This is a wrap-style top jumpsuit intended for stretch fabrics. There are no zippers and no buttons, but there are pockets. I'm using a nice and stretchy rib knit for this video today. I've left a link to the pattern below so you can check out all the details, grab a copy, and sew along with me. So grab that pattern, cut out your fabric, mark your notches, and let's get started. I'll be constructing this jumpsuit entirely with my sewing machine using a zigzag stitch with a width of 0.5 millimeters and a length of 2.5 millimeters for all the main seams. And since the rib knit I'm using does not fray, I'm choosing to leave my seam edges raw. I've transferred the waist darts onto my front bodice pieces and now I'm ready to pin them in place. Folding the dart in half, pinning through one dart leg and out the other. Do this for both darts. And then take your darts to your sewing machine and sew from the bottom to the point, leaving thread tails at the point so that you can tie them in knots. And then press your darts toward the center front. Place your front bodice pieces right sides together with your back bodice piece and pin your shoulder seams. Sew your shoulder seams with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and finish if you prefer. To reinforce your shoulder seams so that they don't overstretch over time, you have the option of applying clear elastic to those seams. I'm going to place the clear elastic on the back bodice piece right along the stitching line that we just created. Then I'll take it back to my sewing machine and sew that elastic in place right along the original stitching line. And press those seam allowances toward the back bodice. Place your two neckband pieces right sides together and pin the short edge. Sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and press your seams open. Once the two pieces are connected, fold this neckband piece in half, wrong sides together the long way, and give that a good press. Now we can attach our neckband to the bodice. Place your neckband right sides together with your bodice. Place the seam of your neckband at the center back of your neckline and pin in place. On either side of your neckband seam, you have notches indicating where to place the neckband at the shoulder seams. Match the notch with the shoulder seams and pin in place. You also have notches on the neckband that will align with the notches on your front bodice pieces. Align those notches and pin in place. And then align the bottoms of the neckband with the bottom of the bodice and pin in place. Now we're ready to sew the neckband to the bodice. Notice that the neckband is shorter than the bodice, so we'll be stretching that neckband slightly from pin to pin for a perfect fit. Make sure that you're applying stretch only to the neckband and not to the fabric of the bodice. Sew all around the neckband with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, stretching the neckband from pin to pin. Open out that neckband away from the bodice and press your seam allowance toward the bodice all the way around. Then, working from the right side of the garment, you can use a zigzag stitch, a twin needle, or a cover stitch machine to sew the seam allowance to the bodice all the way around, so that the neckband stays nicely oriented away from the bodice. Now we can start inserting our sleeves. Place your sleeve right sides together with the bodice, matching the notch at the top of your sleeve with your shoulder seam, and matching the double notches together for the back and the single notches for the front, and pin in place. And then match and pin the ends of the sleeve to the underarm edges. Then you can continue pinning between those notches. Sew your sleeve to the bodice with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and finish the seams if you prefer. Once your sleeve is sewn to the bodice, press those seam allowances toward the sleeve, and repeat to insert your other sleeve. Place one of your back waistband pieces right sides together with the bottom edge of your back bodice. Then pin in place. Baste in place with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once that waistband is basted in place, turn this bodice over and grab your other back waistband piece and place the right side of this waistband on the wrong side of the back bodice, aligning the raw edges and pin in place. Now that the back bodice is sandwiched between the two back waistband pieces, we're going to sew the bottom edge through all layers with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Now open out your waistbands away from the bodice and give this waistband seam a really good press. Then take it back to your sewing machine and baste these two waistband pieces together along the bottom edge with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now place one of your front waistband pieces right sides together with your right front bodice piece. This is the side of the bodice that will be on your right side when you wear it. There's one notch on your front waistband piece that's closer to the shorter edge. This notch will align with the bottom of your neckband piece. Place them together and pin in place, aligning the raw edges. Then align the remaining notch on your waistband piece with the notch on the bottom of your bodice. Then align the side edges and pin in place. Continue pinning in place between these pins. Baste in place with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now that that's attached, flip this bodice piece over and place your remaining front waistband piece on top, aligning the raw edges and pin in place. Now that that right front bodice is sandwiched between both front waistband pieces, we're going to sew through all layers with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Now open out these front waistband pieces away from the bodice and give this seam a good press. And then baste the bottom edges of your front waistband pieces together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance from one end to the other. Fold your right-hand tie piece right sides together lengthwise and pin in place along one short edge and the long raw edge. Sew the one short edge and the full long edge with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Clip the sewn corner of your tie and then turn this tie piece right side out. Give that tie a really good press. Now grab your right front bodice piece and with the seam of the tie that we just created facing downward, align the top edge of the tie with the waistband seam, also matching those side seam raw edges, and pin in place. Baste in place with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Grab your left-hand tie piece and place it right sides together with the bottom edge of your left front bodice piece. You have two notches along the bottom of your left-hand tie piece that are closer to the side edge. One notch will align with the bottom of your bodice so you can pin those in place, and the other notch will align with your center front at the bottom of your neckband. Match the outermost edges as well and pin in place. And then continue pinning in between. Sew the waistband to the bottom of the bodice with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Open out that tie piece away from the bodice. Give this seam a really good press. Now where the neckband meets the tie, we're going to clip into the tie piece, clipping as far as the stitching line that we just created, but not beyond. This will release that seam allowance for the rest of the tie. Now for the remainder of this tie piece, we're going to fold it right sides together and pin in place from the snip that we just created, all along that long edge as well as this short edge. Now sew the short edge and the long edge just to the snip that we created, backstitching to secure. Sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Clip the sewn corner of your tie piece and then turn the tie right side out. And give that tie a good press. Now that the left-hand tie is constructed, We can finish the bottom of the waistband below the left bodice piece. Fold that raw edge to the wrong side by 3/8 of an inch, all the way from the side seam to the center front. And then fold up that pressed edge so that it just covers that waistband stitching line. And pin in place. Now you have two options. You can use a needle and thread to slip stitch this folded edge in place all the way across. Alternatively, you can sew from the right side of the garment, sewing a zigzag stitch along the top of that waistband, either from the side seam to the center front just to secure that folded edge on the inside, or you could continue your stitches all the way across the top edge of that tie. Now place your left bodice on top of your right bodice and align the section of the right waistband that extends beyond the right center front with the side seam of the left bodice. You want the top edge of that front waistband to meet the folded inner edge of the waistband that we just finished on the left bodice, so that the bottom of that front waistband extends 3/8 of an inch beyond that left-hand tie. Pin in place. Baste in place with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Fold your side edge of the pocket pattern piece along the slash line and use it to transfer the slash line onto the wrong side of one of your pocket pieces. Place that marked pocket right sides together with its corresponding front pant piece, aligning the notch and pin in place. Using the line that you transferred as your stitching guide, sew along that line with a 2.5 mm straight stitch. Now trim next to your stitching line, leaving a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And then, just as we did to reinforce the shoulder seams earlier, we can apply clear elastic right on top of that seam allowance on the pocket side. This is an optional step that will help prevent your pocket from stretching over time. Sew this elastic in place to the seam allowance using a zigzag stitch 2.5 mm wide and 3 mm long. Now we can open out this pocket away from the front leg, and we're going to understitch. We're going to sew the pocket to its seam allowance with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance using our narrow zigzag stitch. Turn your pocket to the wrong side of the pant leg and give that pocket opening seam a good press. Now place your corresponding untrimmed pocket piece right sides together with the attached pocket. Matching your notches, pin those pockets together around that curved edge. Sew the outside edges of the pocket pieces only with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then if you prefer, you can finish those edges. Pin the top and side edges of the pocket along the top and side seam, baste in place. Repeat all of these steps to attach the pocket to the opposite front pant piece. Then place your front pant pieces right sides together. Align your crotch curve and pin in place. Sew the crotch curve with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, finish your seams if preferred, and then press your seam to one side. Now place both of your back pant pieces right sides together along the crotch curve and pin in place. Sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, optionally serge those seams and then press them to one side. Place the bottom edge of your back bodice piece right sides together with the top of your back pant pieces. Align the notch at the bottom of your back bodice piece with your center back seam and pin in place. Continue pinning that seam. Sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, finish your seams if preferred, and then press that seam down toward the pants. The pattern calls for 1 inch wide elastic. The length of the elastic for your size is listed in the pattern instructions. Attach a safety pin to one end of the elastic and draw it through your back waistband. Baste the edges of the elastic in place inside the waistband with a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides. Now we're going to place the bottom of the right waistband right sides together with the front pant piece. Make sure that the ties and the left front bodice are out of the way, and pin from side seam to side seam, making sure to also match the notch at the bottom of your right waistband with your center front seam. Then we're going to sew the front waistband to the front pants with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, finishing the seams if you like, and then pressing the seam down toward the pant. Place your front and back pant pieces right sides together along the inseam. Pin them together along the inseam on both sides, matching your notches and the center crotch seam. Sew from the bottom of one leg all the way up and around that inseam and back down the opposite leg. Sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, finish the seams if you prefer, and then press those seams toward the back of the garment. Now place your completed front and back pieces right sides together, matching your underarm seams, your notches, your waistline, and pin in place from the end of your sleeve to the bottom of your pants. Repeat for your opposite side seam as well, and then sew both of your side seams from underarm to the bottom of the pants with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Finish your seams if preferred, then press the seams toward the front of the garment. To hem the bottoms of the sleeves, turn them to the wrong side by 1 inch and pin in place all the way around. Do this for the bottoms of both sleeves. Using a zigzag stitch, a twin needle, or a cover stitch machine, go ahead and stitch those hems in place. Try on your jumpsuit to see how it fits and to assess the depth of your hem. The pattern calls for a 1 inch hem allowance. I'm going to turn that bottom raw edge to the wrong side by 1 inch all the way around. Do this for the bottoms of both pant legs, and then using a zigzag stitch, a twin needle, or your cover stitch machine, go ahead and sew that hem in place all the way around. And now your jumpsuit is complete. Thank you for watching this sew along. Make sure you check out my other videos for more great sewing inspiration, and I'll see you in the next video.